I welcome you, and it's my honor and privilege to introduce our speaker tonight, Dr. Mary Freitag, and this is what I have to say to you about her. As an integrative psychologist, Dr. Mary incorporates experiential mind-body therapies, mindfulness, and neuroscience insight into her compassionate clinical work. Currently, she serves as the clinical psychologist at Hazelden Betty Ford Foundation's Day Treatment in Center City, Minnesota. Prior to joining the Hazelden Betty Ford Foundation, I'm old enough that I still find that a long name because it was just plain Hazelden to me. Dr. Mary developed Spirit Woods in Stillwater, Minnesota, where she continues to provide educational workshops at Spirit Woods Wellness, the full name at Spirit Woods Wellness. In addition, Dr. Mary and her esteemed colleagues continue to offer experiential, research-based ecotherapy and psychotherapy in Spirit Woods nature setting for individuals, couples, and groups. Whether by telehealth or in person at the Nature Immersion Studio, Dr. Mary and her colleagues offer services evolved to meet you safely wherever you are. After receiving her doctorate in clinical psychology, Dr. Mary held positions as staff psychologist and assistant professor in the University of Minnesota Medical School, the Department of Psychiatry. She was an adjunct faculty with St. Thomas University Graduate School of Psychology. She opened Integrative Psychological Services, PA, that means Professional Associates, in 2005 as a licensed clinical psychologist and supervisor in private practice. Today, she continues her private practice incorporating ecotherapy at Spirit Woods Wellness Center. By the way, that's up 95 on the way to Marine, for those of you who don't know all the territory here. Finally, in addition to specializing in mindfulness-based therapies, Dr. Mary trains other clinicians interested in enhancing their clinical skills. Dr. Freitag teaches graduate students in the field of psychology, engages in research to further the understanding of what makes mental health treatments most effective. And she collaborates with other professionals in various disciplines to help provide a whole health approach in the treatment of patients and their families. Specific areas of expertise include grief and loss, anxiety management, trauma recovery, chronic illness, interpersonal effectiveness, couple communication, and family relationship repair. At Spirit Woods, Dr. Mary's therapeutic services for individuals, couples, families, and groups teach daily practices that improve the quality of life. Again, let's welcome Dr. Mary Freitag.
Okay, hoping that this is working. We hearing me? Oh, wonderful. Okay, greetings, everyone. Wow, it's working. It's wonderful to see all of you here. Today we're talking about building life alongside grief. And let me tell you what I mean when I say building a life alongside grief. It's not uncommon to stay stuck in our grief. It's not uncommon to resist feeling grief, and in either case, we're not living life fully. So we don't want to truncate our grieving process because we need to acknowledge or validate what we feel, but we also want to continue to live a functional life while being in the grieving process. Now, I still got to show up to work. I still have to be there for my kids. I still have to be there for my aging parent. The truth, as we all know, is grief stays with us, follows us around, and we're faced with having to live alongside it. So I want to talk to you about an important ingredient that we need in order to move alongside grief, and that is the ingredient of resiliency. Now, the ability to recover from change or illness or misfortune, that's resiliency. It's the act of rebounding. Now, some of you may not even realize that you are practicing resiliency right now. You're here. In grief, sometimes we don't feel like getting up and getting dressed or seeing anybody, but we pull ourselves together and we do it anyway. That's building resiliency. We often experience that once we get there, we think, well, it's not so bad. Actually, I kind of liked it. So over time, little by little, the small act of resiliency happens. We build our lives along grief. Now, Dr. Janice last week showed us a Venn diagram, and it showed us the ebb and flow of the process of grief. So we can experience maybe some acceptance, maybe engage in something new in life or engage in the changes. And we find ourselves getting up in the morning and starting a routine, and we're starting to think, well, this is pretty good. We're going to church or we're getting together with friends. Things are kind of falling into place. And then all of a sudden, we hear a song. And we're right back to feeling that intense grief all over again. The ebb and flow of grief, it's a back and forth process. In time, we can find a greater ability to see things more clearly again and increase our sense of resiliency when we allow ourselves to go through that process, trying to be compassionate with ourselves, noticing what is happening with ourselves non-judgmentally. It does not mean we're falling apart. It means this is how we're wired. This is how we're human. So we can also talk about why, if we're not stumbling, we're not learning. Now, we have a lot of research. I'm hoping this works. There it is. We have a lot of research about our needs in our earliest attachments. Innately, we are born to connect. And when there is loss, we grieve because we innately want to belong. We want to connect. We do this through mirroring one another. And if I smile, I usually receive a smile in return. And if another smiles at me, I tend to smile automatically, unless I'm consumed with some preoccupation and my senses are shut down. We smile in return because we're acknowledged, we're validated. And that comes from a hormone that we call oxytocin. We all have that hormone because it helps us to build relationships. Connection is our innate capacity. Now, that's just our biology. It's how we're wired. So the wound that we carry is because we experience the loss of something that we value or that we love. Now, we have an innate desire to belong, and we want to give back or contribute to be a part of things. And when we're grief-stricken, sometimes it's hard to get back to loving and belonging. So I don't want to go into too much depth of the anatomy of the brain, but I do want to talk about one small part in particular, and that's what we call the amygdala. The amygdala is about the size of an almond. It's that little blue, I don't even know if you can see it. It's that little, it's kind of, yeah, it's that little, what would you say, a robin egg blue in the center of that child's brain. The amygdala, that little center, is our emotional center of our brain. And just like a computer has a save button, our brains do too. When something scary happens, or exciting, or strange happens, that little almond-shaped amygdala helps us click save on that event so that we can remember it better. Now, these same emotions can be triggered by what we later see that reminds us of a previous event, regardless of what happened or where it happened. When the amygdala is highly activated after an event, you're more likely to form a strong, lasting memory. Now, these memories aren't necessarily video recordings. These memories are a compilation of feelings, sights, smells, all of those are senses that are associated with that event. And later, when you're reminded of the event, your brain puts these details back together into a story that feels like a video that you can remember and share if you like. And you're going to remember those feelings and sights and sounds, etc. The emotions that we have are all about how we're wired. Now, if we take a look at this slide, I don't know if you can really even see that writing. So this child sees some people in the corner up there. They're holding presents, and they've got a banner between two trees that says, "Surprise," and it's next to a playground. Now, this child has experience with all of those things. "Look at what I see," he says. "People with presents. They must be happy and fun. And it's a playground. That means fun." Do you hear what I hear? People laughing. This must be a fun party. I smell hot dogs. This means summer cookouts and family. I remember parties being fun. It must be a fun party. So when we are reminded of previous events, our brain will put it together. So as we talked about before, we can experience significant grief, and in time, seemingly find it a little easier to be with our loss. We might even begin, as I said before, to find some acceptance of changes that have taken place until suddenly we're hijacked by a song or a photograph, a smell, anything that might take us back to the point in our life when we weren't so wounded. We are reminded of what we've lost, and suddenly we find ourselves grief-stricken again. What we think has an impact on how we feel. What we think has an impact on how we feel. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So it's important to remember that this is a natural phenomenon. This back and forth process is the body's way of healing itself through emotions and logic. Now, speaking of emotions and logic, the emotion center, you see the amygdala, that represents the emotion center. When the emotion center gets triggered by something, a song, a photograph, we recall what's missing, the alarm goes off because something's not right. And remember, we innately want to belong, so when we are reminded of our loss, the amygdala alarms us, and our emotions can become big, overwhelming, and even taking over the thinking brain, the reason brain. The reason brain shuts down. Now, remember I said the amygdala was the size of an almond in the middle of our brain. Our thinking brain is this right here. So this shuts down. Our system is alerted to pay attention to the feelings because the amygdala is our alarm system that's meant to take care of us. So we might feel despair. We might feel unsafe or alone. And when we get hijacked by those emotions, we might feel we're going backwards. Not so. This is part of the natural healing process. When we find resiliency, we can build our life alongside grief without pushing our emotions away or staying stuck in them. All of the various kinds of woundings that there are, the process is the same. If I've lost a mother, a sister, a father, a brother, a pet, a home, a job, my identity, the process is the same. Now, true for all of us, I'm going to see, the process is this. We all have our emotions, and we all have our cognitive reasoning. Our task is to combine these two states of mind that we all have, and at times they can be at odds with one another. Our heart says one thing, our thinking brain says something else. Here, we've all had that fight. I want to buy it. I will buy it. Oh, no, you won't, the brain says. Or we might say, I have got to get out of this house. I got to sell it. This is depressing. I just need to escape. And the logic mind might say, remember we were told that we really should hold off on big decisions until after about a year when we get through this, or, with our grief. So the goal here is to find the middle path, to release the hold that grief may have on our life. It's important not to ignore grief, but to focus on the present moment, all of what is. And that is being. Now, present moment living. We practice being with a capital B, in the present moment, now. So it says here, oh my gosh, that didn't come through very well. When you think about it, there really is no other moment you can live. Now is all there is. Now, sometimes people say, the present moment isn't all that great. Hard to get happy right now. What we are missing is when we are not engaging fully, meaning all of our senses, we are missing other things that we're not paying attention to, that we don't notice. And it's up to us to be mindful of that so that we can notice all of what is, understanding that there is more in life right now than just grief. Now, when we experience the loss of someone dear to us, a person, a pet, a home, all of that is real and true. And it's important that we acknowledge that so that we can validate that. Yet and still, if we are truly in the present moment fully, our logic mind might say something like, yeah, I am definitely hurting. And you know what? I'm still employed. Or I have a place to live. Or the sun came out today. Or I have found a grief community that I can go to. We build our life alongside grief by being in the present moment and what some people might describe as what is. But what is not just the grief part, as we were saying. Grief is certainly an important part of what is. But it's not the only thing that makes up the present moment. So, our emotion mind will hold our sadness. Our logic mind might notice other things in the present moment. that we may not be paying attention to. In the present moment, we might notice the trees as we're driving, the beautiful sky, the wind on our face, the smile of the person next to me, or what it feels like to have someone just being present with you, not even saying anything. I also know for myself in this very moment that I have suffered profound losses. And I know that right now I am safe, I am doing my best, and I am surrounded by supportive brothers and sisters in my grief community. That describes more of all of what is. Now, the teachings that come from our grief allow us to learn to accept what life brings to us, to be present with whatever is, and we come to understand what really is in our control. In other words, life is teaching us at every moment, even through our losses, if we are willing to be fully present in the present moment. We may stumble back, but we will learn and return again to continue to build our life along grief. Now, if we're hijacked by our emotions and really stuck, how do we get present with all of what is? How do we regain full access to our five senses again when we're just drowning in sorrow? When we get hijacked by the past and absorbed by just one thing, it's up to us to be very intentional to practice resiliency. Now, we can in any present moment turn being triggered around for ourselves. We all, every single person here, have that internal resource. We're going to talk about how to do that. But let me first ask you this. What do you believe, and this is going to just go out to the whole group, what do you believe is the natural state of being calm? Oh, my goodness, I just gave the word. This is why I don't tell jokes. I will tell the punchline first. Okay, well, now we're going to do a memory test. What do you believe to be the natural state of being human? Calm. Yes. Now, scientists and theologians alike tell us that all beings that exist, animals, plants, anything living, are simply being their full self. We are the only species that gets confused about this. In order for us to simply be, our nervous system needs to be in the state of calm so that we can respond to all of what is. Now, the natural state of being human is calm. Now, let's just take a look. Here's an example of our current culture. Now, this can be hard to recognize in our culture because we often reinforce. I don't want to give a broad brushstroke, but in our culture, we tend to reinforce an ADD type of existence. We do it through multitasking, staying competitive, jamming as much as we can into an hour. Lunchtime is crunch time. And so that becomes habitual. And since we have had a nationwide pandemic of anxiety and depression, the practices of mindfulness have become more in the mainstream. We now have calming or mindfulness apps on our phones. Some spiritual communities practice mindfulness at the beginnings and endings of their time together. You'll even experience some of this in a corporate setting. When we return ourselves to the state of calm, we increase our resiliency. Now, I want to give you an example. I'd like to do an experiment with this group. And so I'm going to invite you to right now make a mental note of what you feel right now. Now, you might feel a little anxious because we're talking about grief, very normal. You might feel content. You might feel a little irritated. Just make a mental note of your current state. Now, here's the exercise. I'm inviting each of you to get comfortable in your seats, as comfortable as you can. Put both feet on the floor, and we're going to focus on our breathing for a short while, and then I'm going to give you some instructions. So take a deep breath through your nose and a cleansing exhale through your mouth. Good. And again, deep inhale through your nose, cleansing exhale through your mouth. Good. And you may choose to close your eyes. If you choose to leave them open, let your gaze just fall a couple of feet ahead of you, nice and relaxed and easy. Notice your breath. Let your breathing fall to its normal rhythmic pattern. Notice the inhale and the exhale of your breathing. You may notice the cool temperature of your breath in your nose as you inhale. You may notice a warmer temperature as you exhale through your mouth. As you breathe in, as you breathe out, this breath is yours. This breath is you. Know that all you need to do in this very moment is breathe. There's absolutely nothing else that you need to do. Bring your mind's attention to notice the sensation of your feet on the floor. You may notice a warm sensation. You may notice tingling. You can notice that you are grounded as your feet are fully supported by the floor. Bring your mind's attention to the sensation of your thighs and or your back on your chair. You can know that you are fully supported. There is nothing you need to do but breathe. Breathing, knowing that you are fully supported by the floor, by the seat. You are in the present moment. And finally, when you're ready, you can bring your attention back to this room and notice that you are surrounded by your supportive brothers and sisters in this grief community. Notice what that is like. So I'm going to ask the group, anybody who wants to respond, what's your experience? I'm sorry, one speaker at a time, please. I'm sorry, what? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm giving him a message to turn this speaker up.
I'm just much more aware of my whole body and my presence.
Very important observation. Thank you. Much more aware of my body and my full presence. That is an example of being fully present in the present moment. Next one here.
Hi.
Hi.
Well, first I felt happy and grateful to be here. And then when I focused on my breathing, or tried to, I ground much gooder, that's not a word, outside.
Great observation. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yes.
Yes, and we'll be talking about that. This is really important. Now, there are many ways to practice mindfulness, and I'll be talking about that. And actually, next week, I'll have a handout for you, but I wanted to base it on what kind of feedback I get from folks. Many ways to practice mindfulness. For some people, it is greater enjoyment to be outside in nature, engaging with what is out there. I'm seeing an applause, yes. For other people, just being still and noticing what you don't normally pay attention to, that can be very calming and grounding. Anyone else? Someone else spoke over here. Yes. Can you give her a microphone? Sorry.
I just felt more at ease and relaxed. My
Okay.
whole body just, especially my legs being grounded to the floor like that.
Yes.
And then the continual, the breaths.
Yes, yes. Now, I want to pose this question to everyone. Did you feel the sense of being grounded, supported by the floor and by your seat, and there was nothing you had to do? And I guess for yeses, we'll do this. Yeah, great, great. Now, so what I want to say about that, and actually before I go there, let me ask you, what do you notice that's different from when we first began? Anybody? In other words, do you feel different? Do you feel more of what you felt or less of what you felt? Or what change did you notice? I think someone said, I feel more grounded or more relaxed. I think you said more relaxed. Anybody else have any other experience? I feel sleepy. Yeah, yes. And let me tell you, when that happens, your body is talking to you. Right? You probably need some sleep. Yeah. Anybody else? So when we take a look at how we change, and when we know ourselves, like someone is saying, yeah, I kind of like being outside, we can know what we need to do for ourselves to bring our body's system back to the state of calm, the natural state of being human. And that's the only way we can be in the present moment, because that's when we are fully present. So, to build our life around grief, we have to validate our experience by being with. And when we are with ourselves, calm happens. That's an innate quality that we can bring ourselves back to. And being in the present moment is being with all of what is, not what we think it is, or what we hope it will be, or what we don't want it to be, but truly what is. That is our present moment. And grief is certainly a part of that. Grief is a part of what is, but it's important that we acknowledge our grief, validate our grief, and remember there is more in the present moment besides grief. So notice when you do these exercises that you're noticing things that you're not really paying attention to. I know for a fact that if I am mindful of my breath, I can stay calm, and I tend to do a fast walk. I'm not a runner, but I do fast walking. And if I'm not paying attention to my breath, I'm not able to do it. Walk backwards, sideways, it's no good. But if I'm being mindful of my breath, which I don't normally pay attention to unless I'm doing this exercise, I can go a long ways. So paying attention to what we don't normally pay attention to. So, I talked about that, I said that, did that. Okay. So being mindful, noticing what we don't notice. We can even notice when we receive a smile, what does that feel like? And I want to repeat myself here, yes, finding yourself in the present moment in all of what is allows us to tolerate the distress of what is, to learn and move forward. So when we're noticing the shift in our body, that we're more relaxed, that we're calming our body, does that take care of the losses? It does not. The losses don't go away, but it brings balance into our thinking so that we can respond to what is more fully. Finally, we all know we're experiencing our wise mind, our higher self, our core truth, when we begin to feel more calm and safe and content in the present moment with whatever decision is being made. And each of us that have the power to bring ourselves back to the natural state of feeling calm. The exercise that we did today is just one simple exercise that you can start to practice daily as you continue on your journey of grief. And I want to talk about this daily practice. Meditation, this guided meditation is one example, and you can even do that for yourself. I'm not a pillow sitter. Some people just can meditate on a pillow for a long time. I'm not one of those. I am more a nature person. But whatever is your jam, that's what you need to lean into to bring yourself back in touch with yourself. There are other things to do. Journaling, gratitude lists. Now, we have some very cool research about gratitude lists. They've done some research. This is out of Hopkins, I believe. As you practice practice gratitude every day, and it can be just thinking of 3 things every day in the morning or at night before you go to bed, and you do that for 3 weeks, they found that it changes the anatomy of the brain to more open, healthful existence. And so it's really important to us that we can take hold of our mood and our state and bringing ourselves back to being able to build our lives alongside grief. Does anybody have any comments or questions? I thank you, everyone. I'm grateful to be in the presence of you and in our journey together. Thank you.